listeners, it's Jana. Welcome back to Grief Out Loud. This month marks Grief Out Loud's 11th birthday. If you'd like to help us celebrate this milestone, we'd love for you to leave us a rating, a review, or a comment on whatever platform you use to listen. Today, I'm talking with Adell Coleman, whose mother Elaine died when Adell was just 24 years old. Her mother was killed by a man she was dating, and Adell was the one who found her. Adell was at that moment in life when adulthood is starting to come into view, but a parent still feels like a very needed anchor. In our conversation, Adell shares how her mother's death reshaped her creativity, her sense of safety, and even her understanding of herself as an adult. We talk about what it means to grieve someone whose death involved violence, how trauma can overshadow and cloud out memories of how our person lived, and how therapy has helped her to slowly reclaim those memories. Adell also reflects on parenting her two daughters, who never got to meet their grandmother and yet still seem to carry parts of her with them. For the past few years, Adell's been working on Echoes of Her to Mom with Love, a documentary project about women of color who are grieving their mothers. This week, Adell is launching her podcast, also named Echoes of Her, where she'll be continuing these conversations about loss, grief, and the importance of finding or creating communities that truly understand your experience. Be sure to check out both of these projects, along with Adell's Substack, on My Mama. Okay, here's our conversation. Adell, thank you for finding time to be part of Grief Out Loud today. I'm looking forward to our time together.
Thank you for having me. Same.
Can you introduce us to your mom? What was it like being her daughter?
Sure. My mom, her name was Elaine Coleman, and I am Adele Elaine Coleman. So she gave me her name as my middle name. My mom was very special. She was very loving and caring. She was shy for people who didn't know her, but silly once you kind of got to know her. She was the middle child of four sisters. She dealt with a lot in her life, but she often didn't allow for it to be something that people saw, but you can feel things that she kind of experienced. She didn't like to always kind of talk about herself. She was very humble, and I feel like that's where I get it from, like almost to a fault. She kept to herself a lot. She liked to do crossword puzzles. She liked watching movies. She liked watching cartoons. And I feel like she was just always someone good to talk to. My mom and I had an open line of communication. We would talk all day long, text messaging, calling. And, I know sometimes people say, oh, I could talk to someone about anything, but I truly could talk to my mother about and did about anything and everything. Like, I have friends like, you told your mother that? I'm like, yes. She was not judgy, but she also had a way of teaching me things, but also giving me the room to experience and explore for myself, which I appreciated a lot.
Seems like back in the day, introvert wasn't really like a popular term, but as you're describing your mom, it feels like she had maybe had some introvert tendencies.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like being the middle child, it just kind of defaulted in that like all her other sisters are really like loud and she was more, internal and just quiet and you just kind of get to know her. But she was very sweet, very, very sweet.
Well, describing like the close relationship that you had with your mom and, as your friends had said, it's kind of unusual to be able to speak so openly with a mom about everything that's going on. And you were at a really pivotal time when she was killed. You were 24, turning 25. And what stands out to you of having your mom, who you're so close to, die at that age?
I realized how integrated she was to like everything, even things I didn't expect. Like I like to write a lot, and when she died, I didn't write for years because my mom came out to all my shows. It really dawned on me like she'd come to all my shows. I always read stuff to her first. I've always shared my stuff with her, and like that was such a big part of my creative that was gone, and I didn't realize how in tune she was with my creative self. I also felt like it was weird. It was like when she was alive, I felt like an adult, right? Like I got my own place and my job and I'm doing all these things. But then when she passed, I did not feel like an adult. I felt like a child all over again. And I remember saying to my family, like, I'm only 24 years old. Like, I don't know how to navigate womanhood or adulthood without her. I'm not married. I don't know what the road has ahead of me, or I don't have children yet. And these are things that, I expected my mother to be here for. And now I feel like it's this whole other set of life, right? That I haven't yet experienced and plan to, that she won't be here for. And it felt like I was just a baby all over again.
I had never thought about it from that perspective, right? Of that early young adulthood. Oftentimes you're like stepping out and going into those more adult roles, but there's still that
Hmm.
tether back to maybe an important person in your life. And when that tether goes, it's like, wait a minute, I wasn't ready to be the only adult in the space right now.
Exactly, exactly. And it's like, I feel like because I've always got the whole Adele, you're mature for your age. So while I am the youngest of two older brothers and a lot of my cousins, people already leaned on me or relied on me. So I already kind of felt like I was like mature and this person. But it's like when she died, it was like a bubble popped. I don't know how else to really describe it, but it was just like, that was that life. This is reality. And it felt like I didn't really have a true understanding really of anything at all. And losing my mother in the way that I did, where someone took her life, that had never been a reality for me ever, of losing anyone to a murder. It was more like natural causes or, someone passing in their sleep or, a heart attack or something. And to me, someone passing from someone else taking their life, that was a TV show. That was not a reality. And so my mind was just trying to process even just understanding like that, like who would do this to my mom. And I remember just like pinching myself like crazy and literally hitting my head on the wall because I felt like I was in this horrendous nightmare and I was just trying to do anything and everything to wake myself up.
So that overlap or that intersection of the loss of your mom and missing her and who she is in your life, but then the trauma of how she died and what that meant for your understanding of the world and how things worked.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was just last month of we're recording in January. So last month or
Mm-hmm.
2 months ago, you just passed the 14 years since your mom died. And I know you were the person who found your mom's body. And I'm wondering how your relationship to that date, to that anniversary has shifted or not over time.
You know, it it has. This year, though, I will say it hit me harder than it had in last year prior. It's been up and down. One of the things I always lean back on is my therapist told me very early on, like grief is like the ocean. Sometimes you stand and your toes get wet. Sometimes a wave will knock you off your feet. And I feel like this year it really knocked me off my feet. And it may be because I'm having more conversations around it and with other women around it, but also I feel like the longer it goes, like without her here, the longer it feels. I don't know how to really explain it. It just feels like it's like it hit me. I'm like, she's been gone for so long now. And I feel tired of feeling tired of missing her. Like it's more feelings kind of coming out of it. In past years, there have been times where I wouldn't get out of bed or I would just kind of cry and not move. Some days, like some years I've tried to do an activity. I just kind of go off of, what I'm feeling. And I've learned to be honest with myself and those that surround me, with what I'm feeling. This past year, we took the girls out to dinner. I have two daughters. We took them out to dinner. My mom loves seafood. So we're like, let's just go have a seafood feast, to honor her. But it's like it hadn't dawned on me until later on that morning what day it was. Like I woke up and I was just feeling really sad and I didn't know why. And then I looked at the date and was like, oh, well, that's why. So I feel like this past year, just December as a whole, just was really rough for me. I just miss her like so much. I have more people in my life now that did not know her than those that did. And I wish that they could have known her or, understand, or I could just still have that person that I could talk to about anything and just sit on her lap and she rub my hair and just be my safe space. My mom was 110% my safe space. Not having that really hurt. And I do think back to when I discovered her and just how surreal and painful that was. And I tell people all the time I wouldn't wish that on my enemy because like my mom was just discarded in such a terrible way. Like that's something that I'll never unsee, unfortunately, and never not be able to experience. And so it's like when you're remembering someone or reminded of the day, I'm remembering her passing, but then I'm also remembering all the things tied to it, which has transparently created a trauma for me because sometimes even just to recall good memories, it's like I have to walk through the crime scene all over again just to get to it.
You may not have like concrete answers for this, but I think what you're describing is something that folks who have experienced a violent death or some other way where there's a lot of imagery connected to the death and how it can oftentimes, like you said, make it difficult to access memories of how the person lived without immediately having to recall or replay how they died. What did you do or try over the past 14 years?
I'll say I'm still working through it. At first, I tried to just ignore it, like just go through it to have a memory recall. I also tried to write down the memory that was bad to get to the memory that was good. I look at pictures. Luckily, my mom took a lot of photos, so that does help me to recall, but it's still there. Lately, with my newest therapist, she's been trying what's it called? EDMR, rapid eye movement. Like it's just trying to help place me there and help me to put those feelings and the moment in a box to just kind of be able to like, okay, that was that part, but now I can recall those memories, and that's something I'm literally in the middle of working through now. And I will say, like, having a supportive husband has helped me a lot because he sits and lets me work through it. Like he will ask me something, and even if he's heard the story a million and one times, which he has, he doesn't make me feel any type of way. He'll sit, he'll ask questions, and it also helps with my daughters who I'll see things in them that remind me of my mom. So it's like that quicker memory recall has kind of helped me like shoot past that sometimes to be able to be like, oh, you act like my mother. Oh my gosh, she used to do that. And it comes a little easier. But it's like while I know I won't be able to not see or experience that moment, I just, for lack of a better phrase, find myself sometimes suppressing it or just like pushing it. But now with this new therapy I'm doing, hopefully that'll help me to be able to, all right, I have acknowledged that, but it doesn't take over everything else.
Well, it seems like from what you're saying, Adele, that the EMDR that you're working with is this idea of maybe having a little bit more choice around where
Right.
those
Yeah.
memories are and when you engage with them. And I loved what you said about like your daughters sometimes, like a part of your mom will come through them and it'll shortcut you to that. Is there an example of something that one of your daughters has done recently?
So, okay, my eldest daughter, she reminds me of my mom a lot. She's 11. And one of the things that she does all the time is my mom liked little trinkets, like little things, and she's like that. And my mom liked to collect random things like rocks, and she's done this forever. And so my daughter the other day, we literally were like, okay, let's take a quick road trip, like up the road. And she's like, okay. And so we go up there, we come back, and I come in her room and I just find all these rocks. And I'm like, girl, what are these? We've been putting them over here downstairs. She's like, I just like collecting rocks. And it's like so random because they're not like amethyst and like gemstones. They are rocks. Like you just find in the street. And I love that she's made that her thing. And I have shared with her that that's something that my mom used to do all the time. But it's like I didn't tell her that initially. She just always just loved collecting rocks. She likes collecting little things. Like she has little toys. My mom, one year I remember asking for a tea set. My mom came with a tea set. The freaking cups are this little, the teapot is this big. And so Athena, that's my oldest, she always has little things that she's playing with. She now has like a little kitchenette she asked for Christmas, and it's this big. And so seeing her be able to kind of do those, it just always tickles me because it literally just reminds me of my mother all the
Yeah.
time.
And what a
Yeah.
unique interest or personality trait to come through, especially one that you haven't like explicitly described to her.
Yeah, like she just does it and she just has all these rocks and I'm just like go for it. And these little trinkets, all right, go for it. You can. My mom was a collector of random things. Like she used to work at a grocery store and all her customers would give her pens to put on her clothes. And my daughter just collects random small just trinkets and things all the time. She reminds me of her all the time. And then my youngest, she's 5. I feel like her expressions are a lot like my mother's. So the other day, I will admit I am a mom and I get overstimulated sometimes. So I read this thing that was like sometimes to just kind of help with overstimulation, have them call you something else. So it's not like mommy, mommy, mom, mom, mom 5,000 times a day. And so I told them to call me Mary Higglebottoms for the rest of the day. And my daughter, my little one, Zora, she made this face. My mom used to like her eyebrows would go like that when she would like joke or was worried. She made that face, eyebrows burrowed up, and she said, Adele Lane, who is Mary Higglebottom? And like first of all, who are you to call me Adele Lane, little child? Second of all, that's who you're calling me. And it's like that reminded me of my mother from the face to the hand on her hip and like the little Adele Lane. She's never called me that. Like she's never done that. And so to see her do that, it just like it took me a minute to be like, excuse what? Who are you? So I felt like that was something. And she always, 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 always is affirming like my mother. Like my 5-year-old is always like, you're so beautiful, you're so smart. I love you. You keep us safe. I keep you safe. Like she's just always affirming in a way that my mom, like I dealt with a lot of self-esteem things. My mom will always just, did you eat? Take care of yourself. I love you. I love you, mama. You're beautiful. Like the same things that my 5-year-old does. And every night my 5-year-old looks up at the sky and goes, good night, Nana. Cause that's just her way of just connecting with her in that way.
I'm picturing you and like your heart exploding a little every time she does that.
Yes, yes. She's always like the first time she did it, I was like, and she's like, I could see Nana. Nana says that she loves us, and I just always want to tell her good night and good morning, and all these other things. And I'm just like, oh, okay, like that's so sweet, and I just feel it, and I have gotten emotional, around it. But it's just I also give gratitude to synchronicities, and like that's their way of connecting with her because they haven't met her or been able to experience her, in a physical space.
Oh, and I think it's so powerful to hear an example of how kids who never got a chance to meet somebody before they died can still have a relationship with them. Because I know that is such a big heartache for so many folks if it's a parent or a sibling who died and then they have kids and their kids never get to know them. And it's not the same, but that they can still have some kind of connection.
Yeah, I'll admit that was something that was very hard to navigate early on, especially like with my eldest because she, she was born what 3 years after my mom passing, 3, 4 years. And at the time, like I'm divorcing, I'm a single parent, I'm just going through all of this emotional stuff, and I don't have really anyone to rely on. So it was just me and her. And, just trying to figure it out. I remember going to my dad when I was pregnant just struggling because I was one of the 16% of women that are nauseous and queasy and vomiting the entire pregnancy. So it was really rough. And I remember going to my dad, like, I don't know what to do. And he literally was like, I'm sorry, your mom would be the best person. I don't know how that feels. I don't know what to tell you. I'm so sorry. And I just remember feeling helpless. But with my eldest, I feel like her absence was felt because even more so like triggers of certain things like grandparents day at the school, like I don't have anyone to bring for her, or I remember one time she came home from preschool just devastated because they were doing a family tree at school. And while she knew about my mom, she just felt bad because she's like, why is my tree just like empty? Or, people aren't here. And like, why don't I have a nana? Where's my grandma? Like, that's not fair. And just that broke me because it was just like, I then took it upon myself to make sure she really knew who she was while she wasn't here physically, but it's still like she misses that experience that she's never had. And my grandmother, both of them, my one of my grandmothers passed in 2017, and then my other grandmother passed in 2019. So I've had them my whole childhood all the way through adulthood, and she's not gotten to experience that. And so that was something that, really upset and hurt me, especially when she's trying to do a family tree and, my mom isn't there, but she can't present her for grandparents' day at school.
Well, speaking of family trees that are people are missing, I know you've also experienced, I think you said it was like 11 deaths in short succession right after your mom died, or in that period after your mom died. I wondered if you could talk a little about that.
Yeah, it was weird. In the most weirdest way, it's like my mom's death set off this terrible domino effect in my family where we started losing people a lot. And each year, basically, like it was like we started just literally praying to get through a year without someone passing because and it wasn't like a far away great aunt whomever that I've never met down the line, whatever. It was like my after my mom, then it was my cousin, my first cousin, then it was my grandfather on my father's side, then it was my aunt, then it was my which was her sister, then it was my mom's mother, and my mom's mother, her sister, and her I attribute as the three women that raised me. So in the span of like 5 years, I lost all three of them. And then it was like my other cousins, and the literally 2 weeks before my wedding, my grandmother passed away. And then literally like 2 years ago, I lost my last grandparent, which was my grandfather. It just literally was just a cousin. I had a cousin who unfortunately died in a hit and run accident. Someone hit her when she was crossing the street. So it was just like death after death after death. And it just put me in this weird position because I found myself kind of being an anchor in a lot of ways for my family, asking me how to handle funeral processional stuff and funeral planning stuff and how to handle, grief or how to handle court cases, because of how my cousin passed. I had an understanding in helping them because of how my mom passed. I learned about the judicial system and the court system on the fly, unfortunately. I didn't know what a lot of the terminology was. I didn't understand, why the court dates kept getting pushed back. I didn't understand what's it called? Not the statute of limitations, but it's like they can only sentence up to a certain amount of years based on information that they gather about the person who did the crime. I found that out the hard way, and it's things where I thought situations would be open and closed, but you find out all these laws and legalese around it on the fly. So I found myself in a position of helping, but my grief was oftentimes delayed because I'm now like the grief expert in the family that I did not want to be. But it all started because I handled my mom's situation and then would help out and or handle people since then. And it I'll admit it's left a huge hole in our family. Because like I'm one of the oldest relatives in our family, which is crazy. And I remember one of my friends was like, "You're the matriarch." I'm like, "No, I don't want that title. I don't, thank you." And you look around, but it's like all the elders, aren't here, or, cousins and first cousins and aunties, and then like it's just literally just very few of us left, and it's devastating for the family.
You mentioned that it felt like your grief had to get put on hold because people were coming to you as sources of support and information about like what do we do or how do we handle this. How have you found ways to, if you have, to like process some of that grief for all those additional losses?
Um, I have gotten better. I feel like one thing I learned is like grief is going to hit you whether you want it to or not. Um, I found myself harboring a lot of anger that I didn't realize was there, starting with my mom's death and definitely with my aunt's passing. I was very angry because she literally just dropped and died. Like, I was literally like, what is that? Like, you find yourself looking for answers that aren't going to be satisfactory no matter what you find. What helped me has been journaling, talking to other people about their grief, and also creating boundaries with my loved ones and my family, saying, like, I need space to also deal with this. Or, if I find that someone I'm confiding in can't hear me, but I can only hear themselves, only want to talk about their experiences, I listen, I give them support, but then I look for support somewhere else because I need a mutual exchange, of support. And so I found that creating a space where I only talk to the in great detail to certain people that are trusted, and creating boundaries with others where I create space for myself to be able to process and acknowledge it and not be so critical of myself. Like, I used to be so hard on myself, like, or angry. Like, why are people not still talking about this? This has happened. And I have to give them grace and myself grace to understand that grief hits everyone differently and their processing is differently. And getting back into my journaling has helped with that. Talking with people has helped with that. And honestly, prayer and meditation. I have my sound bowls, just literally creating any space that helps me to work through it. And I'm still open and learning and discovering it as well.
You've mentioned a few times how important it's been to talk to other people about their grief. And I know a big part of what you're working on right now is your podcast, Echoes of Her, that's coming out at the end of January, and also a documentary of the same name, which has been really highlighting the stories of other women who have had their moms die. So I wonder if you could talk a little about kind of how you started connecting with women around that and what that's meant for you to create those conversations.
I feel like this project has shown me that when you're doing what you're supposed to do, people will fall in place. It's crazy sounding, but that's what's happened. I decided at the end of last year that I had been putting off doing a documentary project around myself, my mother, and other women. And I had an epiphany at a festival that I was at, an event where I was like, okay, Lord, if I'm supposed to do this, give me a sign. I ended up sitting beside someone who lost their mom in a session where a guy was talking about losing his. So I'm like, okay, received, understood. So I connected with her. It just took, honestly, more vulnerability from me to put myself out there. So I started just posting on social media. I'm working on this project. If you too have lost your mother, would love to talk to you and just kind of build community. And people bit, and we've done 3 group sessions now. So the project is storytelling through our grief and healing, about the grief and loss of our mothers. We have 4 key women that we're talking to about their stories, and then we're doing group sessions to connect the stories to show that there is so much overlapping when it comes to our grief and healing, and how we feel specifically, with Black women, we're often put with the strong Black woman trope, or your healing is delayed because you find yourself in these leadership positions. So how did you, to your question, process and be able to address your grief? And that's something that we're talking through as well, and finding that we have a lot of things in common. Even with my own situation with my mother, I my grief was delayed for a few reasons because one, my mind could not process what was happening. This is not real. Two, I was planning the funeral and everything else, so I didn't have time to really sit and face it. And then three, I'm supporting my family, and then four, it's a whole court case. I don't know what to expect from this, and it's like it wasn't until April. She died in December. It wasn't until April when everything was quiet and everything went away and he got sentenced that it really hit, and it hit bad. And so I had to be honest with myself out loud with my experiences. And I feel like that has attracted and drawn other women to trust me because I've heard from them like, I love hearing from you, Adele. I trust you to be able to tell my story. I believe in what you're saying, and relatable to then bring more people to trust and be a part of this project. So being more honest and vulnerable and saying the things out loud that I shied away from has definitely helped me to be able to find the community to create this project.
I know I've heard you talk in another interview about your experience of seeking support, grief support early on, and how in a group setting that was not the best fit for you. And I wonder if you could talk a bit about like what feels different now versus then, and that it sounds like this experience is feeling much more supportive and connecting for you.
Yeah. I feel like back then, if I'm honest, I wasn't ready for a group and I didn't know that. Um, because I found myself trying to find community, but a very specific community. I wanted to find people who lost their moms to trauma or someone, did something. They didn't just kind of die of natural causes because it felt different. And being in those group sessions while the women were sweet, I didn't really know how to process it. I was super, for lack of better words, envious because I'm hearing stories about how they got to sit with their mother and their mother would say, I'm not going to be here Saturday, so sit with me Friday. And they sat with her and they got to recount stories and share and, laugh and do all these things, which I didn't get. I'm appreciative that my last words to my mom was, I love you. But to discover a parent and in such a way, it was a trauma. So I guess I was looking for other women who experienced the passing in that level of a traumatic death. Losing your mom is traumatic in general, but to that degree, I felt like I couldn't find it, and I felt like everything was kind of coming up short because even now, it's like you're always seeking answers to your questions, and I felt like in that group session, then I could not find the answers to any of my questions because it's just like, how do you deal with this? How do you stay awake? I'm like, how do you get sleep? Because I'm having nightmares. I'm sleep deprived. I'm scared of everything. I was diagnosed with PTSD because I literally, if the sun was up, I would make moves really quickly. I couldn't have I had certain triggers. I couldn't be around certain people. I had to move in certain ways. And I've had a lot of healing with my PTSD. It's still certain things that trigger me, but I'm much better than, what I was then. And I feel like now the group sessions feel better because I'm finding that we relate on other levels. Unfortunately, I've lost people to sicknesses, so I can relate more to their experiences. But I've also connected with women who have lost someone, due to a traumatic situation or occurrence as well. So it's like I found my community within the community, and being able to interview someone like this one person I'm so close with now. Her name is Jasmine. Her mom died in a really traumatic way as well, and interviewing her felt like I was interviewing myself because she was saying things that I had experienced and I had never even told her. And so to hear her like say those same things to me, it's like these are my people. I get it now. Like I found it. So I feel like leaning in more and not giving up on searching for people has really helped me. And also empathizing and having the space to in my own healing to be able to relate to people who may not have lost their parents in the same way allows me to be more present in group sessions now.
It seems so important to highlight that we need different things at different points in our grief. and at so early on, you needed water that had a very specific flavor, and no other flavored water was going to do anything for
Right,
you.
right, nothing.
And now I've got all the flavors, and so I can connect more to these other women in the places that we have some similarities. Or even sometimes I think we get to a place where hearing the differences ends up feeling helpful too.
And these women are in different places in their grief. We have someone whose, mom may have passed like, I think this year is her first year. So we were able to kind of really support and help talk her through the first and take the pressure off. I remember being like, what am I going to do on the first birthday? What am I going to do on the first anniversary? Like, and now I just let it flow. And I remember one year my friend was like, have you ever just bought your mom a birthday cake for a birthday? And I was like, why would I do that? And they're like, you should still celebrate her. And I did that. And while it was emotional, it was really good. So I find myself maybe having a piece of cake, or I've had a friend that's like, every time you think of a song that reminds you of her, maybe make a playlist for when you're missing her. So I found creative ways to help. And so with these years have, I guess, come wisdom where I can then help and support other people who may be at different places in their grief. But I'm also learning, from them as well that, it's okay to not always have plans locked in for what you should do, because sometimes even that adds pressure, right? You may have plans, and then if the plans go awry, then you're more upset that you didn't stick to the plan. And so I've learned to just wake up and go with what I feel. My mom's birthday is in February on the 25th, and I will go with what I feel. Sometimes that's, going to the cemetery and putting, flowers out for her. Sometimes that's reading something quietly. Sometimes that's just going and celebrating and, with the girls, because I try to make sure they have space in that as well. But I've learned not to drive myself crazy trying to be like, we gotta do something like each year. Like, let it go, let it flow.
Well, yeah, if you go back to the original metaphor you mentioned of grief being kind of like the ocean, right? The ocean doesn't take too kindly to being forced in any one direction. Like it does what it
Exactly.
wants to do.
Regardless, whether you
Yeah.
wanted to or not. So just I've learned to sit in the waves and be honest about how I'm feeling. I used to suppress it or not talk about it because I felt, and it was a direct response from some things people have said, but I felt like people were tired of me talking about her. I felt like a certain window went past, and people were like, "All right, why aren't you over that?" type. And now I don't talk to them at all. But being able to find two or three people that are always just like willing to listen and talk and hear me, that has helped me tremendously.
Well, Adele, I know it's going to be a big month for you with this launch of your podcast, Echoes of Her, and then still working on the documentary. For listeners who want to be able to tune into the podcast to follow along with your documentary making, like how can people connect?
Yes. So a few ways. You can follow me on social media. I'm most active on Threads and Instagram at I am Adell Coleman. It's Adell, not Yelly. I'm not the singer. So I am Adell, Adell Coleman. You can follow me there. And also shoot me a message there, because we have a mailing list for the documentary where we give updates all the time. So just shoot me a DM with your email address. Happy to add you there. Also, you can check out my podcast, Echoes of Her to Mom with Love, wherever you get your podcast. But also you can visit our website, echoesofher.com, echoesofherpodcast.com, where you can shoot me a message there. Happy to chat. I'm always open, like to talk to people, to learn more and to connect people however, I feel or however they may need. So definitely feel free to sign up for our mailing list. And it'll be a link on the website as well to sign up for our mailing list as well. That's where we give updates on both things, and we are intentional. We do not flood your inbox. We do not. We are very intentional about how often we're delivering, updates on projects.
Well, and listeners, a little heads up that I had the honor of being interviewed by Adele for the Echoes of Her podcast. So you'll get to hear both of our voices in another format once
Yes.
that podcast is up. And I also have to give a big recommendation for Adele's Substack, which I will put in the show notes as well, because it's I was saying earlier, right, that there's a lot of things I have to read for my work, and your Substack is something that I get to read. And it's really just wonderfully, what's the right word for it? It just drops you right into the moment of grief being experienced. And that's what I really appreciate. Sometimes, we write from a place of reflection, but I really get a lot out of how you just in the moment, like this is what's happening in my grief right now today. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, Adell, thank you for coming on Grief Out Loud, for making time, for sharing about your mom with me and our listeners, and for all the work that you're doing to help other people find ways of talking and engaging and finding community and connection in their grief. So really grateful for you.
I'm grateful for you. Thank you for having me. And I can't wait for yours to go up and to have you on again. Like, we're just locked in at this point. I love talking to you.
Well, I do love being asked the questions. So thank you again, Adell. And listeners, thank you for being part of our community, for tuning in, for sharing the show with people who you think might be helped by what we are talking about here. You can always reach out to me directly at griefoutloud@dougy.org. That's our main website. So it's dougy.org. There you'll find all the information about our local programming, our free downloadable resources, and of course, each and every episode of Grief Out Loud. I'm always excited to share that the podcast is sponsored in part by the Chester Stephan Endowment Fund. Grief Out Loud is a production of Dougy Center, the National Grief Center for Children and Families in Portland, Oregon. Thanks again for listening. We hope you'll join us again next time.